What is going on? Back up here for another video once again, and today I'm going to be giving you my top 5 underrated WrestleManias of all time. This is my opinion. Feel free to disagree or agree and leave your comments down below. But without further ado, let's get into my top 5 list. We start off here with one of the first pay-per-views that I ever watched here. I'm talking about WrestleMania 24. I thought this was a very good show. Of course, it goes without saying, the first match that I ever watched that got me into professional wrestling was the career-threatening match, Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair. The story told in that match was amazing. That match goes without saying. If you haven't seen it, what do? You gotta watch it. Also on this card, I thought JBL and Finlay, they had a nice Belfast brawl. The Money in the Bank ladder match between CM Punk, Carlito, Chris Jericho, John Morrison, Mr. Kennedy, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin was always fun. Always, makes me miss seeing Money in the Bank at WrestleMania. It was really the perfect way to open up that show. Also on the card here, we had Randy Orton in a pretty good triple threat match here, with defeating John Cena and Triple H for the WWE Championship. I enjoyed the no DQ match between Floyd Money Mayweather versus The Big Show. They actually were able to make that work. And, of course, the main event, which I feel is an underrated match in and of itself, The Undertaker versus Edge. Of course, The Undertaker defeated Edge and extended his WrestleMania undefeated streak to 16-0. Love the hell out of that feud between Undertaker and Edge in 2008, just at the time that I was getting into being a fan of professional wrestling. I felt like that was one of the best feuds that both Taker and Edge have had, and one of the best feuds in 2008. Of course, it's up there with Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. But overall, WrestleMania 24 was a really, really solid show, and that's why it takes my number 5 spot here on my list. We move on to number 4 here on my list. Of course, I'm talking about WrestleMania 7. This, of course, took place on March 24th, 1991 at the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena in Los Angeles, California. Like I said, we got a total of 14 matches here on the card, and I really feel like this WrestleMania doesn't get the credit that it deserves. Whether it's, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty taking on the Barbarian and Haku in a solid opening tag team match. You had another solid tag team match for the WWF Tag Team Championships. The Nasty Boys taking on the Hart Foundation. Of course, Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. One of my all-time favorite tag teams there. You can never go wrong with the Hart Foundation. Solid tag team match there. The Blindfold match. I really love this match. Something different. A different stipulation, and of course, legendary Jake Roberts versus the model Rick Martel. They were able to make this match work, and it was just something that really stood out to me on this card. And from there, we have The Undertaker in his first appearance at a WrestleMania. He goes 1-0, the beginning of the streak, defeating Jimmy Superfly Snuka in dominant fashion. And then one of my all-time favorite matches in WrestleMania history, The Ultimate Warrior versus the Macho Man Randy Savage. The story that was told in this match. Warrior and Savage truly brought out the best in each other, and in my opinion, the Ultimate Warrior's best opponent was the Macho Man Randy Savage. Rick Rude up there as well, but to me, number 1 would be Macho Man. The matches that they had were incredible, and this is one of the greatest matches in the history of WrestleMania. And of course, the story with Miss Elizabeth reuniting, Sensational Sherry being, attacking the Macho Man, turning on the Macho Man afterwards, and then reuniting of Macho Man and Elizabeth, and that all led to the marriage at SummerSlam later that year. And it's kind of hard to watch this match now, knowing that all the participants in this match, whether it was Ultimate Warrior, Sensational Sherry, Elizabeth, and Randy Savage, they're no longer with us, but the match will still live on, and their legacies will certainly live on. And to me, this was the match of the night here on this card, but this was a damn great match. Elsewhere on this show, I enjoyed Mr. Perfect versus the Big Boss Man for the Intercontinental Championship. We had here Virgil defeating Ted DiBiase by countout. Solid singles match here on the show. And then, of course, the main event, Hulk Hogan defeating Sergeant Slaughter for the WWF Championship. Controversial storyline at the time there, with Sergeant Slaughter becoming an Iraqi sympathizer. And we all know where that led to, of course, culminating here in the main event of WrestleMania. So overall, like I said, there were a number of matches that I enjoyed on this card. It's definitely one I recommend checking out on the network if you have the time. So WrestleMania 7, up there to me as one of the more underrated WrestleManias in history. And of course, we move on here to the next year, WrestleMania 8. This took place on April 5th, 1992 at the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, Indiana. And like I said, I feel like this is another underrated show. I feel like it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. We open up here with Shawn Michaels defeating El Matador, Tito Santana. This is a pretty good opening match. Like I said, Shawn Michaels' first match on his own once he split up with Marty Jannetty. Of course, the infamous barbershop incident, threw Jannetty through the barbershop glass. And here, Michaels with Sensational Sherry in his corner, begins his illustrious WrestleMania career and begins to establish himself in the years to come as Mr. WrestleMania. Of course, The Undertaker defeated Jake Roberts here. I thought solid match between Undertaker and Jake Roberts. Jake was on his way out at this time, but of course this was really all about establishing The Undertaker, and just you see where this man, this myth, this legend was headed in the years to come when the streak would begin to grow in aura. His opponents would get better and better, but defeating Jimmy Snuka the previous year, defeating Jake Roberts this year, it really put the spotlight on The Undertaker and showed that he would be a major player in this company for years and years to come. Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper, one of my all-time favorite matches in WrestleMania history for the Intercontinental Championship. I believe the only championship that Roddy Piper ever held in the WWF. To double check that here. Besides he did hold the tag team championships with Ric Flair, but that was later on. But yeah, I believe he only. Wow, that's hard to believe. I can't believe Roddy was never a WWF champion. He certainly should have been. But this match here between Bret Hart and Roddy Piper is an all-time classic. God, a good way to watch it. I don't know if this is my favorite match on this show. It's either that or Macho Man versus Ric Flair, but you can't go wrong with either of these two matches. And of course, Randy Savage versus Ric Flair for the WWF Championship. Great match. The story being told of Flair gonna, show, Miss Elizabeth's picture in the center page, the spread. And it's just Bobby Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon on commentary. Also, man, it just made these matches that much even better. One of my all-time favorite commentary team, Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. They did an outstanding job here on the show, and this was an outstanding match between Savage and Flair, two of the all-time greats. Goes without saying. In my opinion, this should have main evented the show over what we actually got, but all in all, I think this is one of the more underrated WrestleManias. Now, we move on here to number 2. Here on my top 5 underrated WrestleManias, and I go with WrestleMania 14. The show took place on March the 29th, 1998 at the Fleet Center in Boston, Massachusetts, and this has been cited by some as the beginning of the Attitude Era. Some argue it began in Montreal or in late 97, but this is kind of cited as the official beginning, at least of the Stone Cold Steve Austin era, when Stone Cold defeated Shawn Michaels in a solid main event. Wasn't the best match that they could have, but obviously Shawn was undergoing a myriad of his back problems and getting injured at the Royal Rumble earlier that year in that match against The Undertaker. Him and Austin went out there and they had a good 20-minute match. And of course, the ending with Mike Tyson knocking out Shawn Michaels and Stone Cold winning his first WWF Championship. That goes without saying. And, we have The Undertaker versus Kane. And what was my favorite match between the two that they had at WrestleMania? This was the better of the two, and this was one of Undertaker's better matches at WrestleMania. They told a hell of a story here with, Undertaker, Kane really having Undertaker's number throughout a majority of this match, and it took, I believe, 3 Tombstone Piledrivers to defeat Kane. And even though Undertaker beat Kane, and he did kick out, and that was the other thing, hardly anybody at that time had kicked out of a tombstone, so that was a big freaking deal. And after the match, Kane left Taker lying. Paul Bearer helped assist him, hit him in the head with the chair, hit the tombstone piledriver on the chair, and of course this would set up to their match the next month at Unforgiven in Your House, which of course saw The Undertaker defeat Kane in one of my favorite matches, the Inferno match. So, to me, this was when Undertaker and Kane, their feud was at its best. That 97 to 98 build, the build was just on fire. Literally, it was on fire. They were going all out for this shit. So this was great stuff right here. You had a solid tag team championship dumpster match between Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie defeating the New Age Outlaws. Oh, you didn't know? The Rock versus Ken Shamrock. Enjoyed this match, even though, the finish was fluky. Of course, The Rock retained his title due to Ken Shamrock being disqualified, and eventually he went apeshit and just beat a bunch of officials, and I enjoyed the feud between The Rock and Ken Shamrock. Of course, you had the Nation of Domination. This is where you saw the rise of The Rock. Eventually, he went off to become one of the biggest superstars in WWF history. That goes without saying. Solid mixed tag team match here between Mark Merritt and Sable versus the artist formerly known as Goldust and the late Luna Vachon. Triple H versus Owen Hart had a solid singles match for the European Championship. Everything up and down on this card was just really, really good, solid, or enjoyable. Taka Michinoku defeated Agula for the WWF Light Heavyweight Championship, and then we had LOD win the Battle Royale to become the #1 contenders to the WWF Tag Team Championship. So Legion of Doom making their return. So all in all, this was one of the better WrestleManias of the Attitude Era, because it goes without saying, WrestleMania 14 was good. I did not like 15 or 16. 17, in my opinion, is the greatest of all time. So, to me, ranking the Attitude Era WrestleManias, this is definitely, easily, the #2 WrestleMania from the Attitude Era. And then my #1 most underrated WrestleManias of all time is WrestleMania 12, which took place March the 31st, 1996, at the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California. It was funny, during this time, during, the WWF's history, this was, one of the low points in the history of business. That new generation period, you had the steroid trial, you had a lot of talent leaving for WCW, and when it comes to the WrestleManias from 93 to 97, they really all weren't that good. I like 10, and I like 12. I did not like 9, 11, or 13. This was a really great, a really good WrestleMania. From the opening match, 6-man tag team match, pitting British Bulldog, Owen Hart and Vader, defeating Ahmed Johnson, Jake Roberts, and Yokozuna. That was a fun way to open the show. To Roddy Piper defeating Goldust in the Hollywood Backlot Brawl. Just such a different type of match that you didn't see from the WWF at this time. Goldust was, such a different, unique character with what he was doing, bringing that attitude edge. And this, to me, was a precursor to what you would eventually see in the Attitude Era. So this was a fun match between Goldust and the late Roddy Piper. You had Stone Cold Steve Austin making his WrestleMania debut, defeating Savio Vega. This was a sign of things to come. It was helping to establish who Stone Cold Steve Austin is. He was just starting to, transition from that terrible ringmaster gimmick. Still had Ted DiBiase with him, but eventually he would become the Stone Cold character that we all know and love to this day. So this is where he made his impact here on the grandest stage of them all. Ultimate Warrior defeated Triple H in a $1.39. No selling the pedigree, so this was the Ultimate Warrior's short-lived return to the WWF. The Undertaker defeated Diaz in one of the Undertaker's more underrated matches here at WrestleMania. Of course, extending his WrestleMania winning streak. I thought this was one of the Undertaker's best matches at WrestleMania up until that point, because you look at who he had faced before this. His match with Jake I liked. Superfly Jimmy Snuka, wasn't really much to it. John Gonzalez was awful. King Kong Bundy, So this was actually a really good match here between Diesel and The Undertaker. And then finally, Shawn Michaels winning in sudden death overtime in the 60-minute Iron Man match, beating Bret Hart. While this match had, its slow points. I didn't like the fact that they didn't have any falls in it. I would have liked to have seen them, picked up a couple throughout the match, and then you could have had the tie. But what have you? However the match, it ended up with Shawn winning 1-0, them going into sudden death. That was nice to see. Of course, the boyhood dream comes true. Shawn Michaels, he makes a spectacular entrance and wins his first WWF championships. All in all, these are my top 5 underrated WrestleManias. Feel free to agree. Feel free to disagree. Leave your comments down below. I want to get the video discussion going. What are your top 5 underrated WrestleManias? So that about does it for this video, guys. I want to say thank you all for watching. Be sure to click my like and subscribe button here on youtube.com/DanielGuys412 for all my latest thoughts. I will, of course, be back up here in my next video, whenever that may be. So until then, guys, thanks for watching and take care.